Who were you before you lost your wild self?
That's what we're helping you explore on the Tend Her Wild podcast.
Through questions and tools around how best to listen to your inner voice,
rewild ourselves, and live the most authentic life where we thrive instead of survive.
I'm Betsy.
And I'm Kate.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this episode. Hello, Tend Her Wild podcast listeners. We're thrilled today to have a conversation with Ginette Biro. I heard her on a podcast months ago and knew right away that I wanted to bring her into this community and have this powerful conversation. So let me tell you a little bit about Ginette. She is a bridge between our world and other realms. As a medium, she works with different senses to create the link to other dimensions and spirits. She connects with people on the other side who have passed on, with higher beings of light and spirit guides. When she was 5 years old, it all started. She felt beings in her room, who she later learned were part of her council. In 2019, when having a surgery, she had a near-death experience where she got to see and understand her life blueprint. She's been given the decision to come back to Earth to share her experience, teachings, and wisdom with others and guide them on their life path. Ginette also has brought her platform, Avalon Spirit, into life, where she provides all sorts of content around consciousness and spiritual growth. We are so excited to tap into this wise woman's wisdom today. Thank you so much, Ginette, for being with us.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me. And what a beautiful intro. That was so lovely. Thanks.
Well, we are, like Betsy said, we're thrilled to have you. And there's a little nod to this in your bio, but one of the first questions we ask all our guests is, tell us a little bit about your first 10 years. We often find there is a thread, which I think we've already heard a hint of for you, of what shows up later for people in life and their early gifts that may show up, and looking back, kind of seeing those present at a very young age. So share with us those first 10 years and what life was like for you.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I've actually been pondering this a lot lately. Those younger years before you realize what you're thinking, before you're coming into the context of what it means to be you, the human, you just are being. Right. And so I think for me, I was very much in the being. I have memories of being 2 years old and playing hockey in the driveway with our neighbor friends and just being in the moment. It just was that. It was me running around with a hockey stick. Right. And I remember that. And then I remember when it started to shift into kind of my identity. Instead of being just a part of life in any given moment, I began recognizing my identity. And I think that's when I started to really recognize again that there were spirits in my room. So around 5 years old, retrospectively, I understand this, but at 5 years old, I would be fine getting ready for bed. And then as soon as I would get in bed, I just could feel the presence of something at the time. It was something. I didn't have the language to explain it. I didn't have any storyline to explain it. But I just knew, and my heart rate would often react. And my parents would always just say I had a really active imagination, right? Because I was always a really colorful kid, and stories and dances and, all kinds of things. And when I look back on that time now too, I really can see where the natural intuitive gifts were as well. Because I remember lots of times my mom would, she'd go grocery shopping and she'd buy a couple chocolate bars and then hide them for later, or hide something for later, mom's planning meals and stuff. And I would always just know where they were. I'd be like, Mom, why did you hide the chocolate bars way up high? She's like, how did you know that? What? And I would just know these things to ask. And we didn't grow up with a family of mediums or psychics though. So nobody knew what to do with it or knew how to recognize any of it. So I was just kind of this floating tactile kid that would pick up on stuff, right? And truly, that just kind of led me through my life until I was about 19 when I started to really be like, okay, something is going on, right? So those younger years, like it was very transformative, especially coming into that identity piece. But I lovingly look back on it now because of how innately intuitive I already was.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Ginette, I had beings in my room too that I can still see them. And similar, very intuitive young child. Nobody understood it. There was a woman who always sat at the end of my bed. And I think as a kid, I was scared. I would always stuff the covers and tuck them under
Me
my
too.
head. I didn't.
Right? Like a
And my
little baby
parents would
hole.
say, "You're going to suffocate. You can't do that." But I think there was so much going on in my room, whether the spirit sort of knew, oh, we've got someone here who can interact with us, that I was like, ah. And then again, it shut down for me until, much later in my life. So I'm curious from you, when you started to reconcile or at least find some language or maybe someone who could help explain to you what was happening. Because I also didn't come from a family where this was normal or accepted, or grandma was like this, even though I think she was.
Yeah,
She
right?
didn't know it, right? So
Yeah.
when were you able to finally own it?
Yeah, that probably, well, okay, there was a significant moment. So if I back up a little bit, after my grandmother passed away, one of my grandmothers passed away when I was 15. And her and I were always really close. She was religious, not spiritual, but religious. But we just always really got along. And we'd never talked about the afterlife or anything like that. And we knew she was dying and all of this stuff. But I remember as soon as she was technically crossed over, no longer on this earth plane, I had this knowing that terrified me that she was going to come visit me. And I just knew it. And I was like, please don't. Like I was terrified, and I spent the first 2 weeks after her passing every night, like in terror, just saying over and over, please don't scare me. Please don't scare me. Please don't do this. Don't do this. Right. Like just terrified. And nobody again really understood. And after about 2 weeks, I finally started to be able to fall asleep again. And I was like, okay, it's all okay. She's not going to scare me. And then I had this very vivid dream one night where she walked into my room in her blue slacks and her white blouse that she would always wear. And she walked into my room, and I woke up in my dream because I was sleeping. And in the dream, I woke up and I looked at her and I was like, oh my God, you're here. She's like, yes, I'm here. And I'm like, you found a way to not scare me. And she's like, I would never want to scare you. She's like, I just want you to know that I'm okay. And she came and sat on my bed and we talked. And so I woke up the next morning after that crazy vivid dream. And to me, I was like, there was something about that, like there was something. Again, nobody really knew what to say too much about it. And then at about 17, I started hearing spirit, sometimes audibly, mostly in my mind. So then that was terrifying because I was thinking, well, maybe I'm mentally unstable because why am I hearing things like it's a voice, but it's not quite my voice? Never telling me to do anything negative, but it was just a recognition of a voice that wasn't my own. So that spun me into a whole deep dive into learning anxiety, learning about my anxiety, learning how to deal with anxiety. And like, it was learning how to master my mind so I would be able to differentiate between what's mine and what's not. So what seemed like the biggest like avalanche of fear, tackling that anxiety gave me my framework for everything that was to come, right? Discernment. It gave me the framework for discernment. What's mine, what's not. So then by the time I was 19, 20-ish, 19 or 20 or 21, somewhere in that age, I remember I was home alone and my cat at the time was standing down the end of the hallway and I was folding laundry in my room. And I heard this audible voice, this man's burly voice say, Ginette, look down the hall. I was like, oh my gosh, like fear again, right? I was like, no, what is this? I was terrified. And again, he's like, Ginette, look down the hall. And I remember I was like, I probably said every profanity possible, right? And I remember just like barely turning my head. And there was the figure of a man. I could see him very clearly, but he was slightly holographic, just slightly, right? So I knew he was a spirit. He was in military fatigues. He had the combat pants, boots, but just like a plain khaki t-shirt, dark hair. And my cat, though, who was alive at the time, was sitting right in front of him, staring up at him, and her tail was wagging, right? Like it was going back and forth. So it was this moment of like, oh my gosh, she sees him. And I see him and heard him. And I was like, I'm not crazy. Like it was just this moment of like, I haven't been making this up my whole life, all these different things that had happened. And so that really triggered my whole deep dive into what is happening to me. What is this?
Was the man?
Yeah, do you know
who was the man?
Yeah, so he's one of my main guides. His name is Andre, main spirit guide. And so after that day, Andre came to me in dream state because at the time that was the safest way to visit me, right? Like I was comfortable with that. And he showed me so many different things about like how to be able to move through time and astral space. And he would put different people in that dream state so I would feel comfortable. Like, for example, my brother was the one person when I was growing up that if I was terrified at nighttime, he didn't know what was going on. He was only 3 years older than me, but he always held space. And like, it didn't bother him if I snuck into his room at night and slept on the floor. And I did that for years, right? Because it just brought me comfort. So Andre would then put images of my brother in different dream states to help teach me things, but know that it was safe because there would always be my brother just kind of milling around in the background, right?
Oh.
So that was a big pivotal change point where I was like, I'm going to learn now. Now I need to learn what this is. And I lucked out to find 2 different mentors over a couple different years that really helped me understand and build a framework and really kind of grow in my confidence with what was happening. Because I mean, the world of spirit and connecting with spirit, like some things are really big and bold, like when I saw Andre down the hall. Most of the time, though, it's subtle, right? It's really a language of subtleties. And so, again, this discernment of what is real, what's not, what's my brain, what's not. It takes a certain surrender. I think confidence. I think we need a whole lot of information to begin to try and piece it together. So I was really grateful to find these 2 different mentors in the beginning that really helped me on my path.
And was that in your 20s, did you say?
Yeah, that was in my 20s. Yeah.
And did you like share this with friends?
I was curious too, like what do the people in your life think of this? Are they like, oh no, what's happening to Ginette?
Yeah,
exactly. My husband, we weren't married at the time. But when it first started happening, he kind of like joked about it because then I just did deep dives into every kind of ghost hunter show, psychic show. Like, all the books I was reading was different people's biographies of what it's like for them, right? And I was like, oh yeah, that's like me too. And I had only told just a few people. And I remember this one time I went to go meet, so a cousin of mine knew somebody that knew medium, right? And this medium was willing to talk to me. I just wanted to ask him questions. So I remember we met at a coffee shop and I asked him to tell me his story. And when he was telling his story, I was like, there's so many parallels here. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I felt so recognized within myself, right? I was like, okay, again, another moment of like, I'm not making this up, right? Because there's a lot of doubt that goes in.
You're not alone.
Yeah, and I'm not alone. And but the crazy thing was, we completed our conversation. I was like, thank you so much. I got out. I went to go meet my husband in the parking lot. From the time I left the table to the time I walked out the door, I'd already convinced myself that can't possibly be me.
Oh.
And so I like shut it down and I felt such sadness. I cried. And it's sad because I was like, oh, I could have just embraced it, right? But it's still, I had more work to do. But I remember a little while after that, once I'd met my first, so that was before I met my first mentor. And after I'd met Richard, the mentor, and he really helped me, and I started to gain confidence and practice and stuff. I remember I told my family and I told some friends, I was like, I need to tell you all something. And I was like, I'm a medium. And my sister-in-law, who wasn't my sister-in-law yet, she was like, well, that's great. Like, okay. She was like, I wear a medium as well. Sometimes I'm a large. She was like, what are you even talking about? And I was like, no, I can speak with like deceased people. And she was like, oh. And same with my parents. They were kind of like, all right, like, try to be open-minded for me. But again, no one in my family at the time really worked with this, knew about this, were open to this. Like my dad was open to ghost things. Like if he stayed at a old castle, he would get up at night and walk around to see if he could see anything, right? But that's kind of as far as it went. So everybody was a little standoffish at first, and I think a lot of people thought I was, a little nutty. And I think some people also thought it was like a phase or something I'm into or something like that. And it took probably about 5 years of different people having different experiences with me and me sharing actually what I was experiencing or seeing or feeling and having the guts to do it, for people to be like, oh, oh, oh. And then what was really neat is it actually opened up a lot of doorways for a lot of people in my family and friends to start talking about their experiences, right? And being like, I kind of actually have this, or I have this. And so it's actually become really well accepted. But it was an interesting journey to get there, because there was definitely a lot of like, she's
Well, I think about the strength that you had to have in yourself, even at quite a young age. I mean, in our 20s, we're still figuring out who we are. So for you to really stand in it, and I'm sure you were having enough experiences and this guide showing up for you that you were getting, more inner strength to actually be able to own that. And to speak it to your loved ones for, you could have been rejected and teased and, so I really see that there was some fire in you to be able to really step into it and own it from an early age. I mean,
yeah, it was daunting, but here's the thing that I've learned about myself is that I will get to a point, whether it's mediumship or life change or ready to have kids or ready to move on from something. There's this moment, and I'm sure a lot of people have this, but there's a moment where I'm there and I'm ready. Do you know what I mean? And once that clicks in, I can't go backwards.
Yeah.
And I might worry about it for 3 years leading up to it, but the moment it clicks, I can't go backwards. And that's what I remember happened. I was like, I can't not share what I am. Like it was one of those. So kind of had to follow it.
I approach life similarly, where, and this, I talk about things for quite a while. Like I see what's coming. Like I know where I'm going to go, and I'm a little impatient. So I'm like, I want to get there. Yeah. And when you do reach that moment, there isn't any going back. And for me, I can think a lot of those moments in my life. And so, stepping into who you are and being strong about like, declaring this is who I am. This is a gift that I have. And then it sounds like you shared it with the people in your life. And I've had a few experiences with mediums. And I think once you've experienced it, you can't deny the gift in someone.
Yeah.
It really
How do they
does.
know this?
Yeah.
How could they know this?
Yeah.
You know what's funny though, is I have had some people outright deny it. And if I could share a little short story. So my husband and I, early in our marriage, we went to go see a marriage counselor because we needed to learn how to communicate, right? We both had our own styles and it wasn't meshing, right? So we went to go see this marriage counselor, wonderful person. And in the intake, you say what you do and all this kind of stuff. And I wrote medium, and I just started writing medium because before I would always say kinesiologist because I had gotten a degree in kinesiology, and that's what I did before. anyways, so at one point we sit down, and I think we only had 2 sessions with him. So the second session we sit down, and suddenly behind him I see this older man in spirit, white hair. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, it's not really the appropriate time right now. I'm sorry, I'm kind of in a counseling session. So I'm just not going to go there. And the counselor started to tear up. We weren't even talking about anything, and he started to tear up. And he was like so moved, he didn't even know why. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I don't understand why I'm getting emotional out of nowhere. I apologize. Like, he was feeling flustered. So in my head, I'm like, okay, I'll just say something. So I was like, if you remember in the intake form, I'm a medium and I can see and hear deceased people. And I went to describe this person behind them and share the messages of what came through. And it was all very validated in that moment of the why. And the counselor was like, wow, like, just never had this experience before. And he could validate what was being said. So we leave, we come back for the third session. And the counselor had talked to colleagues about what had happened, and they determined it wasn't possible. And so he's like, so I realized that actually was not possible, what happened. And I was like, okay, we're done. It's not going to work here then. If you can't embrace that, I don't think you're going to embrace me. I just don't think this is going to happen. Right? So, like, even very clear experiences, because, when you're the one hosting a session for something, when you're in your professional mode, right? Like, you don't usually burst out into tears, and that's a big moment. That's a big thing. So yeah, I've definitely had some people that, just most of the time, most people are like, you can't deny it. But I have had some people, it's too expansive for their mind, especially when it's something that happens upon them.
Yes.
Like a spirit experience they weren't asking for. They'll tend to shut down sometimes.
That's a really good point. I would say the experiences that we walk into more open-minded to experience, we're probably more accepting of than ones that happen.
Yeah.
Unexpectedly.
And I'm sitting here as a psychologist who holds that professional sort of
there you go.
training. And I was like, oh yeah, I bet he really did have an experience, but then he went back and what's the ethics of this? And there was, like, I can just see the thing. But I feel so bad that the linear left brain had to shut down this really meaningful emotional experience. And I will also say, Ginette, it doesn't surprise me, because I think the profession sort of wires that into you instead of being able to open to all the different possibilities of life. So I love that you actually shared it. I think he probably still thinks about it to this day.
I think he does. I think he does. And I was trying to save him from the embarrassment of him bursting into tears, because I knew that wasn't his, like, the session before, he was very professional. It was all about us. Right. And so I was actually trying to help him save face, kind of thing. Be like, don't worry, I understand why that's happening. Let me explain it to you. But it was too much. Right. So I hold no judgment against him at all. But it's funny. Yeah. How if it's not the right time, it's not the right time.
Yeah. But I also love that you knew yourself well enough and you honored your path and your worldview, that you also said, okay, and I can't work with you now because, right. If you can't honor how my world, like, how are you going to see me and help me if you can't honor my gift? So I also think that was a powerful moment of you saying thank you, and we're moving on. So powerful. Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about 2019, because this is the part that I heard on a podcast, the story, and I was so blown away. Ginette, I've told so many people this story because it just, to me, brings so much peace to my heart. And so I would love for you to share with our guest about what happened to you in 2019, and then how these gifts you already had just maybe took on a whole new power.
Yeah. I still reflect on 2019. Oh my gosh. So 2019, I had a routine surgery to help me, kind of tame my menstrual cycles a little bit because they were very detrimental to my health. And so what was really interesting is during that surgery, well, actually before, so on the way into surgery, so I'm just trying to think of how far back do I go? I'll just start at the surgery part. So going into the surgery that day, I felt such an excitement. And I've had surgery before, and I'm not usually like excited for surgery.
Yeah, that's an
right? Like,
interesting feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
not really excited. But this one, I was like excited, and I was like, well, it's probably because maybe I'll have an astral experience, or it's going to help me with my menstruation, so things will get better and whatever. But the closer I got to it, the more excitement I felt, even though I was incredibly weak. And I remember when I was in the actual OR and they were about to put me under, I felt like a kid who was like waiting for the go sign when they're either like on a water slide or at a theme park. When the person nods and you get to go, like that's the excitement I felt. And when they put me under, I right away appeared on the other side, and I knew exactly where I was in a split second. And so I say that because I have had, by that point, I'd already been a medium for a long time, about a decade. And I'd already been doing readings for people, lots of readings, and talked to a lot of spirits that crossed over, hearing stories of how it is when they cross over. And I would always kind of vision or see it like a vision, as if I'm looking through a window or looking into something, is how I would see it. What made this so different is I was literally there, and I could feel my feet in the grass on the other side, and I could zoom into the grass as close as I wanted just with my eyes and see like the veins in the grass. And it was vibrant. And I was walking up this hill, and the sky was just this beautiful blue. And I happened upon this sort of like summer barbecue scene, and it was for me. And it was like a welcoming from everyone, welcoming me back to the other side, because I knew I landed in heaven. That's where I was. And what was funny is that, like, if you would ask me what I think my heaven would look like, I would say a tropical island, right? Because that's what I would pick. But it was this summer barbecue, which reminded me a lot of like the barbecues we used to have as kids, right? And so I went there, and there was all of these different souls of people I've known in this lifetime. And then there was a whole bunch that were coming from past lifetimes. And I spent what felt like hours there catching up with them, hugs and reunions and like, what have you been up to? What have you been doing now? And like, it was just so beautiful, like so beautiful. And so after I felt like I spent like an entire afternoon there, my grandmother, a different grandmother who was in spirit, came and got me. And then we went to this like white room, far, far, far out into the universe, like really far. And everything was white in the room, and there was some windows, and on the like throughout the windows, you could see the universe, and then you could see where the universe was creating itself. So we were like at the edge of the universe. And on this big giant kind of white boardroom table, my council came around, and they unrolled what looked like blueprints. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, these look like blueprints on Earth. Like, is this my life? And they're like, yes, this is your life blueprint. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so we did a life review of everything up until that point. And then when we got to that point, they then showed me the end of my blueprint, which is about 6 inches long in my memory. But when I try to compare it to how long is it that we went through, I can't get a visual. I see my guide's shoulder, right? So they won't let me compare to kind of figure out how much time I have. Anyways, what they said I could do at this point was change some different fuses, or destiny points, they called them. To me, they kind of looked like fuses in a fuse box. And so the whole blueprint basically was like this big blue paper. And down the center was this iridescent line that was just this energy moving back and forth. So I knew that I was still somehow alive, but I was on the other side, and I was looking at like my living blueprint. And so when they said I could change things up, I was learning how we create our soul blueprints for this lifetime. We create destiny points of lessons our soul wants to learn. And then it's our free will as the human that decides how we maneuver them, right? And so they're like, you can change around this last part. And I was like, okay. So the first fuse I pulled out was chronic illness. Because I used to be just this kid that got sick from everything and like all the things always. I was the canary in the coal mine of the family, right? And so I remember pulling out that fuse and I was like, is it really this easy? Like, I'm not going to be chronically sick anymore? They're like, yep. So I moved it, put a different one back in. And then I went and changed a couple others. And they're like, you can change whatever you want, but you will only remember the first one. So the chronic illness one. And so I remember when I was putting it back in, I kind of was like, yeah, we'll see about that. Because I know what I've been like my whole life. Like, we'll see, And I changed the rest of them. And then after that, again, they said, do you want to stay or do you want to go back? Mm-hmm. And what was really interesting is at that time, I then was able to see I was myself on the other side, but I was also my higher self who was standing across from me, who looked exactly like me, but was my higher self. And it was completely normal in that energy to be me talking to my higher self, also to be my higher self talking to me. I was conscious of both at the same time.
Wow.
And when I saw the way in which my higher self loved all the experiences of this human life, I was like, there's no way I would ever stop now. Like, why would I go back? Because I could see how valuable a human life is. Yeah. And when we cut that human life short, we're missing out on so much. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It's choices. But we're missing out on so much from what we've started. Right? So yeah, they asked if I wanted to stay or come back, and they said it'd be as easy as flipping a switch, and I would have a heart attack on the table, and they wouldn't revive me. Oh my God. And I was like, no, I'm ready. I want to go back. And so we kind of had this agreement that if I was going to come back, I was going to step up and share what I'm doing, because up until that time, for about 10 years, I was working as a medium already. I was busy. I was booked. But I didn't promote anything. It was only by word of mouth. So I had a website, but I never posted on social media. It was only if you knew me, right? And they were like, if you go back, part of your journey is to share what you know. And I was like, okay. And so then when it was time to go back, it happened so fast. I heard the nurse all of a sudden in the recovery room say, Ginette, are you awake? And I felt my soul, my spirit come back into my body all of a sudden, but I could still see my grandmother there right beside me by the bed. And my higher self spoke through me, because having had surgeries before, I am funny. I don't make sense. I'm slurring. I'm just like, I'm a mess, right? I'm a person that takes kids' Tylenol, right? So when they knock me out, like it's something else. Anyways, my higher self came through so clear. And it was like she was coming through from the side, but I heard her say through my voice to the nurse, I need you to write something down. And my eyes were closed at this moment, right? Like I just whooped into my body. And then I was like, I need you to write something down. I need you to write down these 4 phrases. Then I need you to fold the paper up and I need you to put it in my hand. Like I gave her clear instructions, and I gave her the 4 phrases, which really wouldn't make sense to anybody, but they were key points for me to remember. She folded it, put it in my hand, and then they gave me pain meds and asked me how I was doing and everything. And it was amazing that the nurse stopped everything she was doing and she wrote it down.
At that.
Yeah.
It's true.
And so then it was a couple days later after I was home, and I knew something had happened. I knew something was different, because I had never felt such joy for the amazing things we had on this planet. How soft a blanket felt. And like, this is once I was home already, right? Like I was normal me again, right? But how soft a blanket felt, how we created a TV. I just was like, how cool is that, right? We've created something to watch something on a screen in the comfort of our room. Like it was this different perspective. And then I remember my guides came in, and I Again, I'd had no pain meds at this point, and they said, it's time for you to read the paper. You need to remember. I was like, okay. So I went and got it. I opened it up. I read those 4 phrases, and all of the details just flooded right back. And I was like, oh my God, I knew it. And so I sat down. I was at my parents' at that time, and I sat down with them in the backyard, and my mom actually snapped a picture of me telling this story for the very first time in the backyard. And they were like, that really happened? I'm like, it did.
Wow.
So yeah, that was 2019.
It's so mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing.
Okay, so
many questions.
I know, so many questions. So the one fuse that you changed that you got to remember is chronic illness. So I want to know about the chronic illness. And then you knew that you switched some other fuses, but you have no idea, no memory of what those other things are. Is that?
Well, pieces of them would come in when they would happen, is what they said. You'll remember it was a fuse once it happens. You won't know what it is.
Gotcha.
So the chronic illness thing, it took me about a year and a bit to recognize that, in fact, it was different. Because I was always waiting. I was kind of like, no, I get the bad flu every winter. Oh, no, I get the cold. Oh, no, I get this. And it was significantly different. Significantly different. Then, though, what was crazy is in just this past, not this summer, last summer, I ended up having to have another surgery. And it was to have a hysterectomy this time because the surgery I had had before helped for a bit and then it didn't help anymore. And I was kind of like, I thought we dealt with this though. Like, I thought that was done. What's going on? And then I was reminded of the other pieces, the fuse pieces, and my agreement to come back, right? And so I went and had the next surgery. The surgery went great. The technical healing of the surgery itself went great. But then I got an infection, a kidney infection, and then my liver just tanked. And it created a huge downfall of my health and wellness for the last year and a bit. And I was like, this makes no sense. Like, this makes absolutely no sense. I thought I'd changed the fuse.
Yeah.
I'd reached another fuse. And the other fuse that I reached was my willingness. I wanted to go deeper. If I was coming back, I was going to go deeper. Okay. For me to go deeper, I needed to heal some dormant things in my body that were okay at this frequency, but at this frequency, they wouldn't be, which was my liver. I didn't realize how much my mediumship and my personality of like, go, 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 I can handle it all, drink a lot of coffee, was detrimental to my liver based on my DNA and my genetics. I don't detox well. So my liver was overloaded.
Either. Wow. You're telling my story. I'm like,
right?
And the chronic illness as a highly sensitive person, feeling all of it, taking it in my body. And my liver is not good. And I have no idea why, because I like take such good care of myself. Okay, so keep going.
Yeah. So, okay, this is great. So basically what I've learned is in being able to harness these new capacities and energies that I've gained since coming back, which I'll talk about in a minute. My body needed an entire transfiguration cellularly if I want to handle those frequencies, which was what I wanted to do in changing the fuses when I got back, which would require a different healing. Doesn't mean it's chronic illness. It means it's healing root issues. And I was like, oh, right? And so, in order to handle that, what was happening was, so after my NDE and I came back, my capacity to connect with galactics and really higher realm frequencies skyrocketed. It was just like what I would normally do to tune in before and stuff would just happen like this. So then I was just doing this all the time and not grounding enough, staying too busy and burning out the system and basically not creating a ground wire, right? And so I learned too how our physical body has to have a calibration to the frequencies that we use, right? Like otherwise, that's why so many healers, mediums, psychics burn out because there's not a balancing calibration to the used energy. and it will affect the body. So it's been a whole year of learning how to balance the energy capacity and the reach that I can gain with the human body, which has been another journey.
So what are some of the things you do now that are different? How do you balance your energy differently?
I work much more slowly now. So before I would book up my schedule just because I like to be busy, and producing and creating and all this. And I've had to really slow down and really feel the amount of energy I use when I do channeling, when I do a reading for somebody, when whatever it might be, if I'm exploring higher realms or astral travel, I have to give equal amounts of time of downtime for recalibration. And I mean, for those that are busy moms, like downtime is a hard thing to come by, right? So I've had to change that. I've had to come up with a deeper grounding practice. Like daily, I connect my energy to Mother Earth every day now so that I have this like energetic frequency of vitality coming up from her. Like she helps anchor me so I don't feel like I'm just flowing in the wind, right? I've also had to really learn boundaries and not saying yes to everything. Because before I would want to help everyone and anyone because they needed help and I could, so then I would, and it just, burnout. So I've had to change my self-care practices, both in a tangible human way and also in my spiritual energetics. So.
And has your health been better, like in this last year?
Well, yes, it's not there yet, but I know the path now. So this past year was me fighting in my own energy of like, what's wrong? I don't understand. Because I thought we fixed this in 2019. I changed the fuse, right? I didn't realize, I didn't fully understand, because spirit doesn't always just give it out front, right? Especially for us. I was like, come on, tell me. But the transmutation I was able to move through and the healing I've moved through this year energetically, soul family trauma lines, my own soul lineage, biological stuff, like the amount of stuff I have moved through this year has been unreal. And so the grounding I feel as a person now is significantly different from after my surgery in 2019. So I see the path now. My body's on the way to that path, but I think maybe by springtime, I'll be feeling like my full peppy self again, I think.
Beautiful.
Yeah. But the new version, right? That needs more balance.
You keep evolving.
Yeah.
I have a question about the blueprint, and I just feel like this is such a powerful discussion for anyone listening, and maybe you can help me clarify some things. So I've also heard or feel in my own body and system that we get to learn more and evolve more in human form than in spiritual form. So even though we're all spirit beings and we could go to a different realm, it's like we can't grow in the same way as we can when we're in this dense earth school. And that earth school is really dense and really hard and really painful, but it's where we get to evolve most. And you're shaking your head. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But what I want to know based on this blueprint idea is that there are certain things that we maybe prearrange before we come into these bodies, certain experiences or people we need to meet or things that need to happen to us. And so there's these points, but then in between there is free will, but there are like certain rendezvous or certain things that are just going to happen no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe what we get free will over is our reaction, our response, how we deal with it, how we move through it. But there are certain things that they're going to happen no matter what. Is that your understanding of the blueprint?
Yeah, that's the basic, but it gets more interesting. So,
Okay.
And this I've learned over time, right? So the basic blueprint is exactly like you said. Like we decide as a soul on the other side what we feel we would like to learn in this lifetime based on what we've learned every other lifetime. Where are you at now? What project would you like to take on? Right? Mm-hmm. Which is why when my higher self was talking to me, I could see how much my higher self was like, we have learned so much. This has been great. And I could see it from her perspective. And The thing that I still argue with my guides a little bit, though, is the spirit perspective romanticizes a little bit the struggle of the human, right? It's kind of like, when you see pictures of a new mom with a little baby and it's like, oh, that's beautiful. And yeah, I want a little baby too. And oh, look how snuggly. And like, there's moments of that. But the reality, it's really hard,
Yeah.
right? It's really hard. And you don't know how hard it is until you're in that, in that experience.
Right.
And so having been there and having been back and still talking to them, I will sometimes argue the human of like, I get what you're saying, but this is really hard as a human. So when we are planning our blueprint, we're planning the bigger perspective of like what we want to learn on the soul level. It is very hard as a human, though. Most of the time, the soul lessons are going to be challenging because we're meant to grow through it. And it is exactly that. We put in these pivot points, but we use our free will as the human, depending on how tuned in we are, how tapped in, how not tapped in, to choose what we do about it when we hit that pivot point. And so the way I explain it is like everyone's blueprint is unique to them. And it's kind of like a river. Everybody has their own unique river design that meanders as it's supposed to. You can't fight the river design, right? You can't drive your boat across the ground to move past one part of the river. You have to follow the river. But you are given a boat to do as you want in the river. So you can either fight and try and go like the wrong way, you can stop, you can flow with the current, you can fight the current, you crash your boat, rebuild your boat. That's your human free will on this river, right? So that's the base part. But then what happens as people start to grow and ascend and really be reaching this kind of like 5D, 6D consciousness that a lot of people are reaching now, as like we split in consciousness, the higher you go in your conscious capacity, the more you have greater ability to sort of maneuver or sort of reshape your river. You actually, because you become, the higher you go, you become a conscious creator. You're creating in the moment. You then are changing the path of your river. And so it's not like we're stuck to this river. We are if we stay in a lower frequency. If we stay 3D, it's 3D stuck river. But if we move higher in consciousness and heal things and move things and transmute things and create, we then have the ability to start shifting our river a little bit in real time.
So beautiful.
It really is. And how have you been able to do that then since all of this work?
Yeah. I have. It hasn't been easy though. It's an understanding that makes sense now, but to get to that understanding, I fought it a lot. Right? Because I can, as spiritual and soft as I can be, I can also be really feisty, right? Because I want to understand and I want to know, and I've had to learn patience. So I totally hear you on that, right? But the more that I would go into the healing, as the healing would happen, the more I realized I was then choosing my reality. And then I was creating my reality, which was then creating more steadiness within me, which helped more healing. And then I'm like, hey, I'm shifting this river a little bit, right? And my guides are like, that's exactly it, right? If you think about it, like when you are in grade 2 or grade 3, your timetable in the day is pretty rigid and the teacher's going to stick to that timetable. When you're in grade 11, 12, they're like, hey, here's the project. If you want to go to the library, go for it. If you want to go home, if you want to be on a computer, whatever, but it's due this day. Figure yourself out, right? So it's different. So the higher you go, the more personal autonomy you have, but it's about what you do with it. So it's not just this like free flow, like, sweet, I'll stamp my 6D ticket and it'll be easy. It's there's a personal responsibility and hard choices and ways you have to look at yourself in the mirror or look at situations for what they really are and then choose. But your capacity when you're choosing in those ways makes it very different.
Hi, I'm Sam, founder of the Local Hub. When I moved to Iowa City, I felt like a tourist, and I'm sure you can relate if you've ever moved somewhere new or just haven't explored your city in years. Supporting local has never been more important, and the Local Hub makes it simple. It's a community-first way to uncover the local businesses, events, and hidden spots that make an area feel like home. If you're in the Iowa City area, you'll find us online, in print, and on social media, all designed to keep you in the loop about what's happening here. Visit thelocalhub-ic.com and start living like a local.
So you brought up this idea of responsibility, Ginette, and I would love to hear you expand a bit more on that. There's this idea that as we're evolving and growing, that seems like such a positive thing. And yet it does seem, as we're choosing to take the steps to become a more conscious human, that what comes with it is a deeper responsibility. Like you said, whether it's stepping up in your own profession in a different way or having more integrity with how you live your life. So I'd love for you to parse out or help us understand more the responsibility that comes with the growth that we might be experiencing in our own life.
Mm-hmm. I think we have to become more self-involved. And so not self-centered or self-involved the way we would see it in the human language, but rather we have to be aware of the self. We need to know what we think and feel about things in order to be an authentic partner, creator, or whatever. And we can't do that unless we're willing to look at all of the aspects. So the things that are good for us and the things that are not good for us. And we have to be real. We need, in order to handle the higher frequencies, create in the higher frequencies, you have to be more authentic. And I know the term authentic has kind of become this buzzword, but like, you need to be real with yourself. You need to know yourself enough to be able to know when, I am reacting this way because I'm tired and it's pulling out my old judgments, right? I am reacting this way because I'm passionate and I know a better way. I am like, you need to know you need to know your why. And in order to do that, you need to spend some time figuring out what you want, who you are, what you're about. And I think that's where the responsibility starts first and foremost. Because if you know you, truly know you, then you know how you would like to treat other people, right? And you know how you would like to hold yourself in an environment or in a position or whatever. And we have to be personally responsible in order to be co-creators, right? Otherwise, we're not creating from authenticity. And authenticity is the strongest frequency in these higher dimensional aspects of consciousness. It has to be real. Fakeness does not work there. It'll fall away. Fakeness is a 3D thing, right? And so in the journey to that, and I don't do it perfectly at all, right? In the journey to that, we sometimes have to meet ourselves and call ourselves out. And there are so many times where I will have a moment with spirit where I'm like, hey, I want to sit and talk with you guys, and I'll call my counsel forward and I'll be like, listen, I understand why you're bringing this experience here, but here's why I disagree, right? And I will share my side. I will express my piece. And then at the same time, though, right after, I'll be like, but I can understand why you are this, this, and this. And so I think it's like when you're willing to call yourself out, then you're willing to also create from that same place, right? So it's like personal responsibility comes with deep humbling. And oftentimes to get there, we need to be humbled. And a lot of people are going through real, like, life is kicking them in the butt. But where in that can you be humbled a little more, right? Because if you really are willing to look at it, and it's not always humbling because you did something bad, but it's like humbling to help you recognize something you're not seeing, right? Once you see that, that piece can become a part of your power. And then it becomes a part of your co-creation because it's no longer something you're hiding from or don't want to be seen, or like you embrace it. And then you become more real. And then, it grows from there.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mic drop when I think about the world we're living in right now and how people what we do have agency over and where there is true power right now.
And it's not easy. Like, I just really want to express that. It's easy to say. it's really hard to do. You know, like nobody likes calling themselves out on those moments where you're like, wow, I realize that was pretty brutal of me, or that thought, or whatever, you know. But it's like, if we recognize that as we see those things and not hold a judgment to it, we can see that everybody is experiencing those things. And if we all released judgment and helped others, then we would all be moving forward in these amazing co-creations. It would just happen so much faster, but we're so still stuck to the protection mechanism of the ego.
Yeah.
Understandably so. Look at where we've come from, right?
Yeah.
So it takes a personal responsibility to see who you really are, to stand up in who you really are, and to fall and fumble and then get up again to hold those frequencies.
We have 2 questions left. We've got one more that we always end with, but I do want to ask you, as a medium and someone who's really tapped into the other side in these really trying, intense times, which I think we all clearly signed up to be in, because here we are.
Here we are.
Do you have hope for sort of the evolving of our consciousness? Or do you, like, I'm curious about this bridge that you are between our world and the spirit world, and our world that seems to be falling apart, but it's clearly divinely ordered. Do you have some guidance for us about your perspective on what's happening now in our world?
I really want to validate for everyone, it is not easy. It's not easy being here. It is layered so thick. People are moving through personal, physical healing and changes. People are moving through emotional healing and changes of this life. People are moving through ancestral history within their DNA that is coming up for them to heal because it wasn't before. Then we have solar energy and these solar storms that, like, we used to have like solar flares every couple months. You would have one, and now we're having several in a week, right? That's a lot of energy. And then we have this year, especially, all the planets have moved signs. Like, we have this huge sandwich stacked of intensity. And so I want to acknowledge it is really hard in some form for everybody. That being said, though, like you said, we have all decided to be here at this time. And so we all, on the soul level, we're like, I can handle it, right? And from the human level, we're like, no way, no, I can't. But the higher self is like, yeah, you got this, right? So I just want to validate that position for everybody, because it is a lot. What I keep hearing from my guides and from the galactics that are helping humanity as well is that humanity is actually making these leaps and jumps in ascension faster than they predicted. It doesn't mean everybody is as a whole, but there are bigger groups of people making higher leaps faster than they predicted. And so, like I said earlier, there are a lot of people actually living already in a 5 and 6D consciousness in their daily life, not just the 3D, 5D split, right? Where this is something that's very, very real right now. There are people choosing to stay rooted in third dimensional thinking. And then there are those that are moving into higher out of the box thinking, and then even 6th dimension. And that's creating a huge divide. So we are seeing that. And the divide is getting far apart from each other too. So we're seeing it's not just kind of side by side, it's far apart, which is why there's a lot of changes in people's relationships happening and their groups of, what they align with. It's 2 different levels of consciousness happening on the planet. But the more people are growing and creating from this position, the more it is pulling the whole of humanity in that direction. And those that absolutely refuse to change will eventually, when they cross over, carry on somewhere else that still holds this frequency. And over time, Earth will move into that frequency. And so it is doing that. And a lot of the children coming in now are coming in with a higher frequency already, because the bodies have an ability to hold the higher frequency already. Whereas our bodies, we're trying to change them like mid-game here, which is why a lot of people are suffering. But a lot of the younger kids are coming in with higher frequency bodies as well. So we are this bridge work, but it is moving in that direction. And so every time one person works on healing for themselves, the ripple they create is so much more than they realize. And that's why being self-involved and working on you has a huge effect for the collective.
I love that so much.
Me too. That gives me hope.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your deep, deep wisdom today. This has been an amazing interview. And we always like to end with one final question for our guests based on the book Women Who Run with the Wolves. Clarissa Pinkola Estes says there are 4 doors into the life of a wild woman, and you are certainly connected to the wild woman archetype. So we're wondering what door most resonates with you. So if you have a deep scar, that is a door. If you have an old story, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you can almost not bear it, that is a door. And if you yearn for a deeper life, a full life, a sane life, that is a door. So is there one or more doors that really stand out to you as a portal for you into your life as a wild woman, which may have started at age 5 for you?
Yeah, right? Yeah. I would say there are 2 doors, the 3rd and the 4th door for me, because the sky and the water are like a part of my heartbeat. They're part of who I am. I'm always in awe and wonder of that, as well as though the 4th door of living with deep purpose is the rhythm, right? So like if the sky and the water was the heartbeat, but there's like a rhythm to my heartbeat, there's like something to it. Like I have to live with purpose. There has to be meaning, because for there not to be meaning in my life, I would just fall apart. I have never been someone that can do like a 9 to 5 thoughtless, just routine. I don't do that well. I have to have purpose as to why. So I would definitely be a mix of 3 and 4.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Ginette, you clearly have so much purpose. And I mean, I just feel like never even met you until this moment. And your story, when I heard it months ago, shifted something. And like I said, I've told so many people about the blueprint, and then getting this chance to talk to you today. Clearly you are living a life of purpose and impacting so many people, probably people you've not even met, just like me. So thank you.
That's so
And I would love for you to tell people about your platform and where they can find you. I know you've got a podcast and you put all this beautiful work out since this 2019 event. You clearly have stepped up. And so let people know where they can learn more about your work.
Yeah. So I am on YouTube and social media under Ginette Biro Medium. So I do lots of different videos and things, just tidbits, insights, card readings. And then the website is avalonspirit.com. That's where you can find all the courses and offerings that we have. And as well as I have the Spirit Wisdom podcast. And so that I put out weekly and share messages, insights, energy updates. And yeah, it's just lots of sharing of my perspective and stories. So
well, thank you again. This has been a joy spending time with you, and so insightful, and really you brought hope to us today, and some excitement.
Yeah.
I think about you prior to that surgery. I have excitement in a way I haven't always had about the future. There's, so thank you for that perspective and for being with us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful. And I just appreciate the space and the energy, and the energy shared with both of you has just been lovely. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ginette.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Come back and rewild with us again next week.